The dust on Outpost 7 tasted like rust and regret. Dale Harper wiped his mouth with the back of his hand, watching his credit balance drop another 10 units as the fuel pump chugged away. 3 months of hauling scrap metal across the outer colonies, and he barely had enough to keep his ship running. The life of a freelance cargo hauler wasn't glamorous, but it was his. He stretched his legs in the cramped marketplace while his ship refueled. The outpost was little more than a few prefab buildings and some automated stations clinging to a barren rock. Maybe 30 people lived here permanently, all of them looking like they had nowhere better to go. Dale understood that feeling. Near a stack of salvaged engine parts, 3 locals surrounded someone. Dale heard raised voices and the sound of something hitting the ground. He walked closer, curiosity getting the better of his usual policy of minding his own business. The 3 men were laughing, kicking at a cloth bag that had spilled open. Mechanical parts scattered across the dusty ground. An elderly alien knelt on the ground, trying to gather the pieces with trembling hands. Dale had seen plenty of species in his years hauling cargo, but he recognized this one from his basic education files. Qualthani, silver skin that faded with age, 4-fingered hands, and those distinctive ridged foreheads. This one looked ancient, with skin gone almost gray and movements that spoke of deep exhaustion. One of the men kicked the bag again, sending more parts flying. The alien said something in a language Dale didn't understand, but the translator device clipped to his collar sparked and went dark. Broken. Dale didn't think. He just moved forward and positioned himself between the men and the alien. He wasn't particularly tall by human standards, but humans were generally bigger than most species he'd encountered. The 3 men took a step back. "You got business here, hauler?" one of them asked, recognizing the guild patch on Dale's jacket. "Yeah, I do now, move along." Dale kept his voice calm but firm. The men grumbled but walked away. Not worth the trouble over an old alien with nothing valuable. Dale waited until they disappeared around a corner, then turned to help gather the scattered parts. The alien watched him with large, pale eyes that held surprising clarity despite the body's obvious frailty. "You're okay now," Dale said slowly, using simple words and gestures. He picked up the bag and started collecting the mechanical components. They looked like pieces of a shuttle's navigation system. The alien spoke again, and though the translator was dead, there was gratitude in the tone. He pointed to himself and said what sounded like Orin. Dale tapped his own chest. "Dale." Orin nodded, a gesture that seemed universal. He pointed at the parts, then made a flying motion with his hands, then shook his head sadly. Dale understood. Shuttle broken, stranded here. They collected the parts together in silence. Orin moved slowly, clearly in pain. When everything was gathered, Dale noticed the alien swaying slightly. When had he last eaten? The station's food vendor was barely functional, but it existed. Dale gestured for Orin to follow. The vendor was a battered automated kiosk that smelled like recycled protein and desperation. Dale ordered 2 meals, watching his credit balance drop further. Orin's eyes widened when Dale handed him the tray. The alien started to protest, but Dale just shook his head and pointed at the food. They ate together in silence. Well, Orin ate slowly while Dale watched the marketplace. He was losing time on his delivery schedule, but something about leaving the old alien here alone didn't sit right. Maybe it was because Orin reminded him of his grandfather, who had the same quiet dignity even when things went bad. After the meal, Dale gestured toward the parts. He pointed at himself, made a fixing motion, then pointed at Orin's shuttle. The alien understood and led him to a small docking pad on the edge of the outpost. The shuttle was old, probably older than Dale. The navigation panel hung open, circuits fried and crystalline components cracked. Dale knelt and examined the damage. It was fixable, but the parts would cost credits Orin clearly didn't have. The mechanics here wouldn't work for free, and they'd charge triple for off-world repairs. Dale thought about his own cargo hold. He had spare parts from a previous job, components he'd been meaning to sell. They weren't exact matches, but with some adaptation work they'd function. He spent the next 4 hours in the shuttle, rewiring and replacing components. Oren sat nearby in the shade, occasionally offering sounds that might have been advice or encouragement. The old alien seemed to understand spacecraft systems despite his age. Once, when Dale was about to connect two incompatible circuits, Oren made an urgent sound and gestured frantically. Dale paused, looked closer, and realized the polarity was reversed. The old alien had saved him from frying the entire system. When the sun started setting over the barren horizon, Dale finished the last connection. He powered up the shuttle, and the navigation system hummed to life. The display showed star charts and stable readings. It would get Oren wherever he needed to go. Oren stood slowly and approached Dale. The alien placed one hand over his chest and bowed his head deeply. Dale felt embarrassed by the formal gesture. He waved it off and wiped the grease from his hands onto his pants. "No problem. Just be careful out there," Dale said, knowing Oren couldn't understand the words, but hoping the meaning came through. Oren reached into a small pouch at his waist and withdrew something wrapped in cloth. He unwrapped it carefully, revealing a small crystal that caught the fading light and seemed to glow from within. He pressed it into Dale's hand, closing the human's fingers around it gently. Dale wanted to refuse, but something in Oren's expression stopped him. This mattered to the old alien. Dale nodded and tucked the crystal into his jacket pocket. Oren smiled, the expression transforming his aged features briefly into something almost youthful. They stood there for a moment, two beings from different worlds who couldn't speak each other's languages, connected by something simpler than words. Then Oren climbed into his shuttle, moving with renewed energy. The engines powered up smoothly, and the craft lifted from the pad without any hesitation. Dale watched it climb into the darkening sky until it became just another point of light among the stars. He touched the crystal in his pocket absently, then headed back to his own ship. His delivery was going to be late, and he'd used up parts he could have sold, but somehow he didn't regret it. The refueling had finished an hour ago. The system had charged him for the extra time. Dale sighed, paid the fee, and prepared his ship for departure. Just another day in the outer colonies. Help someone, lose some money, keep moving. He never imagined that 4 hours of work would change everything. 3 weeks of routine cargo runs later, Dale had almost forgotten about the encounter on Outpost 7. Almost. The small crystal sat on his ship's dashboard, catching starlight during jumps between systems. He'd meant to examine it more closely but kept forgetting. Life moved fast when you were hauling freight on tight schedules. He was halfway through a protein bar that tasted like cardboard when his communication system activated without warning. Dale nearly choked. Ships didn't just call random haulers unless something was very wrong or very official. The encryption codes scrolling across his screen were unlike anything in his database. A face appeared on the monitor. Female, Qualthani, with deep blue skin that indicated youth by their standards. She wore elaborate robes marked with symbols Dale didn't recognize. Her expression was formal but not unfriendly. Hauler Vessel Registration 742 Delta. I am Ambassador Rena of the Qualthani Sovereignty. I must speak with Dale Harper immediately. Dale swallowed his mouthful of protein bar. This is Harper. What's wrong? Did I break some law I don't know about? Rena's expression softened slightly. You are not in violation of any regulations. Quite the opposite. I am contacting you at the request of High Chancellor Orenthale. Your presence is requested on our homeworld for a matter of significant importance. High Chancellor, Dale blinked. I think you have the wrong person. I'm just a cargo hauler. I don't know any chancellors. You encountered Elder Oren on Outpost 7 approximately 21 standard days ago. You repaired his shuttle and provided him with assistance. Rena's eyes held something that might have been amusement. The High Chancellor was quite specific in his description of you. Dale felt his stomach drop. The old alien he'd helped was some kind of government official. Look, I didn't know who he was. I just helped because those guys were hassling him. We understand completely. That is precisely why the High Chancellor wishes to speak with you. I am transmitting coordinates to Qualth, our homeworld. You will be compensated for any delays to your current contracts. Rena paused. This is not a summons or legal obligation. However, the High Chancellor rarely makes personal requests. We hope you will accept. Dale looked at his current route. Industrial equipment bound for a mining colony. They'd wait another week if he paid the delay fees. And if these Qualthani were offering compensation, maybe he could actually make some profit for once. I'll come, but I need coordinates and clearance codes, and someone needs to contact my client about the delay. Rena's smile was brief but genuine. Already arranged. Safe travels, Dale Harper. The screen went dark. Dale sat in silence for a long moment, then pulled up his navigation system. The coordinates Rena had sent placed Qualth deep in civilized space, far from the frontier routes he usually traveled. He'd need 3 jumps to get there. 2 days later, Dale's small hauler emerged from its final jump into a system that took his breath away. Qualth hung in space like a pearl, all silver cities and blue oceans. Orbital platforms surrounded it in perfect geometric patterns, and ships of elegant design moved between them with practiced precision. His communications panel lit up immediately. Hauler 742 Delta, you are expected. Please follow the escort ships to landing platform 7. Dale looked out his viewport and saw 2 sleek vessels appear on either side of his battered hauler. They weren't threatening, but their presence made his ship look like a garbage scow. The escorts guided him down through the atmosphere with gentle precision. The landing platform was larger than the entire Outpost 7 station. Dale saw dozens of ships, each one more impressive than his. He sat down where directed, feeling increasingly out of place. When he opened his hatch, the air smelled clean and carried a faint scent like flowers. A group of Qualthani waited at the base of his ramp. They all wore formal robes, and when Dale descended, they bowed in unison. He froze mid-step, completely unprepared for such a reception. Ambassador Rena stepped forward. In person, she was taller than Dale, with an air of calm authority. Welcome to Qualth, Dale Harper. The High Chancellor extends his gratitude for your prompt arrival. This is really not necessary, Dale managed, gesturing at the assembled officials. I just fixed a shuttle. You provided assistance to our High Chancellor when he was in need, without knowledge of his position or expectation of reward. In our culture, such actions hold profound significance. Rena gestured for him to follow. Please, you must be tired from your journey. We have prepared quarters for you. The quarters turned out to be a suite larger than Dale's entire ship. Real windows overlooked a garden filled with plants that seemed to glow softly in the fading light. A meal waited on a table, actual food prepared by hand rather than dispensed by a machine. Dale picked at it nervously, trying to understand what he'd gotten himself into. He accessed his ship's database and searched for information about the Qualthani. What he found made his situation clearer and more terrifying. The Qualthani sovereignty was one of the oldest civilizations in the known galaxy. They controlled over 200 worlds and held significant influence in something called the Galactic Assembly. Their culture valued honor, wisdom, and service above everything else. And their High Chancellor was apparently someone incredibly important. Dale searched for information about Orantale, but found only official records listing his position and service dates. Nothing about why an official of that rank would be traveling alone on a backwater outpost. A soft chime at his door interrupted his research. Rena entered when he called out. She carried a small data pad and wore a less formal robe than before. The High Chancellor will see you tomorrow morning, she said. I thought you might have questions. Dale had approximately 1,000 questions, but he started with the most pressing one. Why was someone like him on Outpost 7 alone? Rena sat across from him, her expression thoughtful. The High Chancellor occasionally travels in disguise to understand the lives of ordinary beings. He believes that leadership disconnected from common experience becomes hollow. She paused. He did not expect his shuttle to malfunction, nor did he expect someone would help him without seeking advantage. Dale processed this, so I wasn't supposed to know who he was. Exactly, and your actions, taken without knowledge or expectation of benefit, revealed something the High Chancellor considers extremely valuable. Rena stood to leave. Rest well. Tomorrow will change your life, Dale Harper. After she left, Dale stood at the window, looking out over the alien city below. Somewhere in this gleaming metropolis, the old alien he'd helped fix a broken shuttle was making decisions that affected hundreds of worlds. Dale touched the crystal in his pocket. It felt warm, almost alive. He had a feeling Ambassador Rena was right about tomorrow. His simple life as a cargo hauler was about to become very complicated. Sleep came in fragments that night. Dale woke twice, convinced this was all some elaborate mistake. By the time dawn light filtered through his window, he'd given up on rest and was packing the room nervously. Rena arrived precisely when she said she would. She wore ceremonial robes in deep purple and her expression was serious. "The High Chancellor awaits. Please follow me." The corridors they walked through seemed designed to inspire awe. Walls displayed artwork spanning thousands of years, and windows overlooked courtyards where Qualthani practiced what looked like meditation or martial arts. Other officials they passed stopped and bowed to Rena, then looked at Dale with undisguised curiosity. They reached a massive door carved with intricate patterns. Two guards stood on either side, wearing armor that looked ceremonial but probably wasn't. Rena spoke to them briefly in her own language, and the doors swung open silently. The chamber beyond stole Dale's breath. It stretched upward at least 50 meters, with columns supporting a ceiling painted with star maps. Hundreds of Qualthani stood in organized rows, all facing a raised platform at the center. The silence was absolute. On the platform sat Orin, but nothing about him resembled the frail elder from Outpost 7. He wore robes of state that seemed woven from light itself, marked with the same symbols Dale had seen throughout the palace. His posture was straight, his expression calm and commanding. Around his neck hung a pendant that matched the crystal Dale carried. When Dale entered, every Qualthani in the chamber turned to look at him. Then, as one, they bowed deeply. Dale stopped walking, frozen by the gesture. This couldn't be right. They were bowing to him. Orin rose smoothly and gestured for Dale to approach. His movements were fluid now, showing none of the trembling weakness from their first meeting. Dale forced his legs to move, walking down the center aisle while hundreds of eyes watched his every step. When he reached the platform, Orin descended to stand level with him. The old alien's eyes held warmth and something that might have been amusement at Dale's obvious discomfort. "Dale Harper," Orin said, and Dale heard the words in perfect English through a small translation device. "Thank you for answering my summons." Dale found his voice with effort. "You speak English now." "I always could. My translator was genuinely broken on Outpost 7, but I have access to better technology here." Orin gestured to the assembled crowd. "Allow me to properly introduce myself. I am Orentale, High Chancellor of the Qualthani Sovereignty, Keeper of the First Covenant, and Speaker for 200 worlds in the Galactic Assembly." The formal titles washed over Dale like cold water. He'd helped one of the most powerful beings in the galaxy, and he'd treated him like just another stranded traveler. "I had no idea." "That is precisely the point." Orin turned to address the assembly, switching to the Qualthani language. He spoke for several minutes while Dale stood awkwardly, catching occasional glances from the crowd. When Orin finished, he switched back to English. "I have explained to my people how we met, How you defended me from those who would take advantage of an elderly traveler. How you repaired my shuttle using your own resources, expecting nothing in return. How you fed me when you noticed my exhaustion. Oren's voice carried clearly through the vast chamber. You saw a person in need and responded with simple kindness. Dale shifted uncomfortably. Anyone would have done the same thing. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Oren smiled. That response itself is telling. You genuinely believe what you say. He paused, choosing his next words carefully. My journey to Outpost 7 was intentional, a personal pilgrimage to reconnect with ordinary life. The malfunction was unfortunate but genuine. I wanted to experience the galaxy as a common traveler without the weight of my position. Why? Dale asked, then realized he might have been too blunt, but Oren didn't seem offended. Because power and isolation are dangerous companions. I have served as High Chancellor for 173 years. I make decisions that affect billions of lives across hundreds of worlds. I feared I had lost touch with basic decency, that I could no longer recognize simple goodness when I saw it. Oren's expression grew distant. I needed to know if kindness still existed without calculation or expectation of reward. Dale finally understood, and I proved it does. You proved that it exists in humans, a species we knew very little about until recently. Oren gestured to Rena, who approached carrying a data pad. The Galactic Assembly is an organization of civilizations committed to peace, cooperation, and mutual growth. For years, we have sought new species to serve as mediators in disputes between worlds. These mediators must possess wisdom, fairness, and genuine empathy. Rena activated the data pad, and a holographic display appeared showing star charts and species profiles. Humans have been observed for some time. Your species shows remarkable adaptability and emotional intelligence. However, we lacked evidence of your ethical foundations. Until now, Oren continued, your actions on Outpost 7 demonstrated the qualities we seek. You helped without knowing my position. You sacrificed your time and resources for a stranger. You treated me with dignity regardless of my apparent circumstances. He paused. Dale Harper, I wish to nominate humanity for a seat in the Galactic Assembly, with you serving as the first human mediator. The chamber remained silent. Dale felt the weight of hundreds of gazes, all waiting for his response. His mind raced through implications he barely understood. Represent all of humanity. Mediate disputes between alien civilizations. He was just a cargo hauler who'd fixed a broken shuttle. I don't understand why you think I'm qualified for something like that, Dale said honestly. I haul freight. I'm not a diplomat or a leader. You are someone who does the right thing when no one is watching and no benefit is expected. That is more valuable than any diplomatic training. Oren's expression grew serious. I do not ask for an immediate answer. This decision affects your entire species. You will need to consult with Earth's government. You will need time to understand what this offer means. Rena stepped forward. We have already established contact with your United Colonial Government. They are aware of this meeting and are standing by to speak with you. Dale looked around the chamber at the assembled Qualthani officials, faces he couldn't read, representing a culture he barely understood. They wanted him to be a bridge between humanity and the galaxy, all because he'd spent a few hours fixing a shuttle for an old alien who looked like he needed help. I'll need more than time, Dale said slowly. I'll need to understand what mediation actually involves, what it would mean for Earth, what responsibilities come with this. Oren nodded approvingly. Wise questions. Rena will provide you with all the information you require. Take as long as you need. Rushing such a decision would dishonor both of us. The High Chancellor placed a hand on Dale's shoulder, a gesture that sent another murmur through the assembly. You gave me something precious on Outpost 7. You reminded me that goodness exists without calculation. Whatever you decide about this offer, you have already given the galaxy a gift. Dale left the chamber with Rena, his mind spinning. Behind him, the assembled Qualthani began to disperse, their voices rising in discussion. His simple act of helping a stranded traveler had somehow become a moment of galactic importance. He touched the crystal in his pocket again, feeling its warmth. Nothing would ever be simple again. The communication room was smaller than Dale expected, but the holographic displays made up for it. 3 screens showed different groups of humans, all looking at him with expressions ranging from excitement to suspicion. Earth's united colonial government had assembled quickly once the Qualthani made contact. Governor Patricia Wells spoke first from the central display. She was in her 60s, with gray hair and the weathered look of someone who'd spent years managing frontier colonies. "Mr. Harper, we've reviewed the High Chancellor's proposal. I'll be direct. This seems too good to be true." Dale appreciated the honesty. "I had the same thought, but I've been here 3 days now. I've spoken with dozens of Qualthani officials. I've reviewed their records and history. I think they're genuine." "Or they're very good at deception," countered Director Ramon Santos from another screen. He represented Earth's Security Council. "We know almost nothing about galactic politics. This could be a trap to learn our weaknesses." "With respect, Director," Rena's voice came from beside Dale, "if we wish to learn about humanity, we have had centuries to do so. Your species has been spacefaring for over 200 years. We have observed you during that entire time." The humans on the screens shifted uncomfortably at that revelation. Wells leaned forward. "Observed but never contacted. Why now?" "Because observation provides information, but not understanding," Rena explained calmly. "We knew humans were technologically capable. We knew you expanded carefully and avoided major conflicts with other species. What we did not know was whether you possessed the ethical foundation we require in mediator species." A younger man on the third screen spoke up. Dale recognized him as Representative Lucas Chan, one of Earth's cultural advisors. "And one cargo hauler fixing a shuttle convinced you of that. One human treating a stranger with dignity and compassion, expecting no reward and knowing no consequences, demonstrated it." Oren's voice came from the doorway. He entered the room, and all the humans on screen straightened instinctively. "Your species shows remarkable consistency in this behavior based on our observations. Acts of mutual aid during disasters. Rescue operations for ships in distress regardless of species. Negotiated settlements instead of territorial wars." Dale watched the displays. Wells and Chan seemed intrigued. Santos remained skeptical. Other faces showed everything in between. This was humanity deciding its future, and they were split. "What exactly does membership in this assembly mean?" Wells asked. "What are we agreeing to?" Rena brought up a holographic document. "Member species gain access to established trade routes, educational exchanges, technological databases, and protection under assembly law. In return, members agree to peaceful resolution of disputes and contribute to the collective defense against external threats." "What kind of threats?" Santos demanded. "Space itself is dangerous, Director. Asteroid impacts, solar events, resource shortages. The Assembly coordinates responses to these natural disasters. We also maintain defenses against the few hostile species who reject peaceful coexistence." Oren's expression was grave. "The galaxy is vast. Not everyone wishes to cooperate." Dale had learned this during his 3 days of education. The Assembly wasn't perfect, but it was better than the alternative. Hundreds of civilizations working together instead of competing for resources. Wells made a decision. "We need to vote on this. Earth's government will need 48 hours to reach a consensus." She looked directly at Dale through the display. "Mr. Harper, what's your opinion? You're the only human who's actually met these people face to face." Every eye on every screen focused on him. Dale took a breath, thinking about what he'd seen. The Qualthani treated their servants with respect. Their cities were clean and their technology advanced, but they hadn't lost their connection to art and culture. Oren himself carried wisdom from nearly 2 centuries of leadership, yet he'd traveled incognito because he feared losing touch with ordinary life. "I think they're offering us something valuable," Dale said slowly. "Not just technology or trade, but a place in something bigger than ourselves. I've hauled cargo across human space for 15 years. I've seen our colonies struggling alone, reinventing solutions that probably already exist somewhere in the galaxy. We could learn so much." "And what would we give up?" Santos pressed. "Our isolation, our independence to make mistakes without consequences." Dale met Santos's gaze through the screen. "But we'd gain the collective wisdom of hundreds of worlds. We'd have allies if things go wrong. And we'd have a voice in decisions that affect our region of space whether we're members or not." Oren nodded approvingly. "The young human speaks wisdom beyond his years. The galaxy does not stop at Earth's borders. Decisions made in the Assembly already affect you. Membership simply gives you a voice in those decisions." The meeting continued for another hour. Questions about defense commitments, trade agreements, cultural preservation. Dale answered what he could, and Rena provided detailed explanations for the rest. Finally, Wells called for an end to the session. "We'll reconvene in 2 days with Earth's decision. Mr. Harper, regardless of the outcome, your service to humanity in this matter will be recognized." Wells paused. "And thank you for helping an old traveler when he needed it. That simple act opened a door we didn't know existed." The screens went dark. Dale sat in silence, suddenly exhausted. Rena placed a hand on his shoulder in a gesture she'd learned from observing humans. "You did well. Many of your leaders are cautious, but that is wise. Rushing into something this important would be foolish." She smiled. "The High Chancellor wishes to speak with you privately if you are not too tired." Dale followed her to a smaller room with comfortable seating and windows overlooking a garden. Oren was already there, sitting without his formal robes, looking more like the elderly traveler from Outpost 7. "Sit, please. I wanted to speak with you away from ceremony and politics." Oren gestured to a chair. "You are handling this pressure remarkably well." "I don't feel like I am," Dale admitted. "I keep thinking about how I almost didn't help you. I was in a hurry, low on credits, behind on my delivery. I almost walked past." "But you did not. That is what matters." Oren leaned back. "I have lived for 247 years. I have seen thousands of moments where beings chose between convenience and compassion. Most choose convenience. You chose differently." "Why does that matter so much to you personally?" Dale asked. "I mean, I understand why it matters for choosing mediators, but you seem like this meant something more." Oren was quiet for a long moment. "Because I feared I had become cynical. When you have seen as much as I have, experienced the endless cycles of conflict and cooperation, it becomes difficult to remember why we strive for peace. You reminded me that goodness exists simply because some beings choose it. Not for reward, not for recognition, but because it is right." Dale understood then. He hadn't just helped an old alien fix his shuttle. He'd helped an ancient leader remember why his work mattered. "Whatever Earth decides, I'm glad I met you," Dale said honestly. "As am I, young human, as am I." Earth's decision came through exactly 48 hours later. Dale stood with Oren and Rena in the communication room, watching Governor Wells appear on the screen with the other council members behind her. After extensive deliberation, Earth's United Colonial Government accepts the Galactic Assembly's invitation to membership. Furthermore, we appoint Dale Harper as humanity's first representative and mediator with full diplomatic authority. Wells looked tired but satisfied. "We're taking a leap of faith here. Don't make us regret it." Dale felt the weight of those words settle on his shoulders. Oren placed a hand on his arm, a gesture of support that had become familiar over the past days. The formal ceremony happened the next day. Dale wore clothing provided by the Qualthani, simple but dignified. Oren presented him with credentials in front of the full Assembly Council, and for the first time, Dale saw representatives from dozens of other species. Insectoids, crystalline beings, creatures that looked like they swam through air, all of them watching as humanity officially joined their organization. But ceremony was one thing, real work was something else entirely. 3 days later, Dale found himself on a transport ship heading toward a disputed region of space. Rena sat across from him, reviewing files on a data pad. The Valhari and the Bryn have been arguing over mining rights in the Kelter Belt for 6 years, she explained. The asteroids in question were discovered by both species simultaneously, and neither will back down from their claims. Dale studied the files she'd given him. The Valhari were insectoid, with a complex social structure based on collective consciousness. The Bryn resembled Earth's mammals, but with 6 limbs and bioluminescent markings. Their culture emphasized individual achievement and personal property rights. Previous mediators tried to split the belt in half, Rena continued. Both sides rejected that solution. Then they tried rotating access periods, also rejected. The situation has escalated to armed ships patrolling the boundaries. Why hasn't the Assembly just forced a solution? Dale asked. Because forced solutions breed resentment and future conflict. True mediation requires both parties to feel heard and respected. Rena's expression was serious. 3 times in the past 2 years, this dispute nearly erupted into violence. This is not a simple assignment, Dale. The meeting took place on a neutral station at the edge of the disputed belt. The Valhari delegation arrived first, 12 individuals moving in perfect synchronization. Their spokesperson, a creature Rena identified as lead coordinator Brix, spoke through a translator with a voice like clicking stones. We discovered the Kelter Belt through collective survey efforts. The resources belong to our colony as a whole. Individual claims undermine the welfare of the collective. The Bryn delegation arrived an hour later. Their leader, a female named Tessa, had striking blue bioluminescent patterns across her fur. Her voice was sharp, frustrated from years of failed negotiations. My people found those asteroids through individual prospecting efforts. Each asteroid was claimed by the person who discovered it. Collective ownership erases the value of personal achievement. Dale sat between them in a conference room, listening to arguments he'd already read in the files. Both sides were entrenched in their positions, both certain they were completely right. Previous mediators had tried to find compromise, but compromise required both parties to give up something they fundamentally believed in. After 2 hours of circular arguments, Dale called for a break. He asked to speak with each delegation separately. The other mediators observing the session exchanged doubtful looks. This was the human's first assignment, and he was already deviating from standard protocols. Dale met with the Valhari first. Tell me about your colony, not the asteroids, just how your people live day to day. Brix tilted its head, an insectoid gesture of confusion, but it answered. The Valhari lived in interconnected hive structures. Work was assigned based on aptitude and need. Resources were distributed equally. The system had functioned for thousands of years, creating stability and ensuring no individual suffered while others prospered. What happens if someone wants to work alone? Dale asked. That does not happen. We are collective beings. Isolation is a form of death to us. Brix's translator conveyed something that might have been distress at the concept. Dale met with Tessa next and asked similar questions. The Bryn lived in individual family units. Each person pursued their own goals and kept what they earned. Property rights were sacred. The system encouraged innovation and rewarded hard work. What happens if someone can't support themselves? Dale asked. Tessa's bioluminescence flickered. Communities help through voluntary charity, but forced redistribution is theft. Taking what someone earned destroys the meaning of achievement. Dale spent that night reviewing everything he'd learned. The problem wasn't the asteroids. The problem was that two completely different worldviews were colliding, and neither side could understand how the other's system could possibly work. The next morning, Dale called both delegations together. "I'm not going to propose splitting the belt or rotating access. Those solutions don't address the real issue." Both sides tensed, expecting another failed mediation. Dale pulled up a holographic map of the Kelter Belt. "What if we divided the belt into 3 zones? Zone 1 operates under Valhari collective principles. All resources found there belong to the colony as a whole. Zone 2 operates under Bryn individual principles. Each asteroid can be claimed by the discoverer. Zone 3 is experimental, where both your species can work together voluntarily." Silence filled the room. Brix's delegation began clicking rapidly to each other. Tessa's fur patterns shifted through several colors. "That is impossible," Brix finally said. "How can two contradictory systems exist in the same space?" "They exist all across the galaxy," Dale replied. "On Earth, different regions have different property laws. Some emphasize collective good, others individual rights. They coexist because they serve different people with different needs." Tessa leaned forward. "You are suggesting we both get what we want by accepting that the other's way is equally valid." "I'm suggesting you both want the same thing, security for your people, but you achieve it differently. Your methods don't have to be enemies. They can be neighbors." Dale highlighted the zones on the map. "This way, you preserve your core values while respecting theirs." The delegations requested private time to consider. Dale left the conference room with Rena, his heart pounding. He'd either just solved a 6-year dispute or made it worse. Rena touched his shoulder. "That was either brilliantly innovative or catastrophically naive. We will know soon enough." 4 hours later, both delegations returned. They agreed to a trial period of 5 years using Dale's 3-zone system. The agreement included monitoring stations and regular reviews. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. As Dale watched both sides sign the preliminary agreement, he realized what Orin had meant about mediation. It wasn't about making everyone agree. It was about helping different perspectives coexist. Human wisdom wasn't superior to any other species, but maybe humans were good at recognizing that different didn't mean wrong. Word of the Valhari-Bryn agreement spread through the Galactic Assembly faster than Dale expected. Within a week, he received 3 more mediation requests. Rena gently declined them on his behalf, explaining that he needed time to understand his new role. But the message was clear. The human mediator had done something the Assembly hadn't seen in decades, found a genuinely new solution to an old problem. Dale returned to Qualth exhausted but satisfied. He expected a quiet debriefing with Orin and maybe some rest. Instead, Rena met him at the landing platform with an urgent expression. "The High Chancellor requests your presence immediately. Something has happened." They walked quickly through the palace corridors. Other Qualthani they passed bowed deeply, but there was tension in the air. Rena led him not to the formal chamber but to a private room Dale had never seen before. Ancient texts lined the walls, and the windows looked out over mountains in the distance. Orin stood at the window, his back to the door. He looked older somehow, the weight of his years more visible. When he turned, his expression held something Dale couldn't quite read. "The Assembly Council has called for a full gathering. Such events occur perhaps once in a generation." Orin moved to a table where a holographic display showed hundreds of worlds. "They wish to formally recognize humanity's membership and your role as mediator. But there is more you must understand before that ceremony." Dale sat when Orin gestured to a chair. "More than you being High Chancellor. That title describes my political function, but I hold another position, one I have not yet revealed to you." Orin touched a control, and the holographic display changed to show ancient text. "I am Keeper of the First Covenant, the original agreement that formed the Galactic Assembly 12,000 years ago. The numbers made Dale's head spin. 12,000 years. How is that possible? You said you were 247 years old. That is how long I have personally served, but the position of keeper has existed since the Assembly's founding. There have been many keepers across the millennia. I am merely the current one. Oren's expression grew distant. The Qualthani were the first species in this region of space to achieve interstellar travel. We found other civilizations and faced a choice: conquer or cooperate. We chose cooperation. Rena entered quietly, carrying a crystalline object that pulsed with soft light. She placed it on the table between Dale and Oren. This is the first covenant itself, Oren explained. Every major decision in the Assembly ultimately comes to me for guidance, not because I am wise, but because the covenant contains the accumulated wisdom of every keeper who came before me. I am the living voice of our founding principles: preservation of life, cooperation over conflict, and the elevation of consciousness throughout the galaxy. Dale stared at the crystalline object, understanding finally clicking into place. That's why my helping you mattered so much. You're not just a political leader. You're the moral center of the entire Assembly. I am meant to be, but after nearly 2 centuries in this role, I had begun to doubt myself. The weight of decisions affecting billions of lives across hundreds of worlds had become crushing. Oren sat heavily. I questioned whether I still possessed the clarity to guide others, whether I had become too removed from basic decency to recognize it. So you traveled to Outpost 7 to find out, Dale said, finally understanding the full picture. I needed to know if simple goodness still existed in the galaxy, or if I had become so isolated that I could no longer recognize it. Oren picked up the crystal Dale had been given weeks ago. It matched the one on the table. This is a fragment of the first covenant. I gave it to you because your actions renewed my faith, not just in humanity, but in the principles the Assembly was founded upon. Rena spoke softly. The full Assembly gathering will formalize humanity's membership, but it will also be a ceremony acknowledging that the Keeper has found renewal through contact with your species. This is unprecedented in Assembly history. Dale felt the weight of this revelation. His simple act of fixing a shuttle hadn't just helped one person or even opened doors for humanity. It had reminded the moral center of galactic civilization why their work mattered. I don't know if I can live up to this, Dale admitted. I'm just a cargo hauler who tries to do the right thing. That is precisely why you can, Oren said firmly. The galaxy does not need more warriors or conquerors or even brilliant diplomats. It needs people who act with integrity when no one is watching. People who help strangers because it is right, not because it is beneficial. The Assembly gathering happened 3 days later. Dale stood in a chamber so vast it could hold thousands. Representatives from 600 civilizations filled the space, some physically present, others attending through holographic projection. The diversity was overwhelming. Beings of crystal and shadow, creatures that flew and others that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Oren addressed them all, his voice carried through translators to every species. He explained how a human cargo hauler had helped an old traveler on a forgotten outpost, how that simple act had reminded the keeper of the first covenant what the Assembly truly represented, how humanity demonstrated the qualities the galaxy needed: compassion without calculation, aid without expectation of reward. The vote to formalize Earth's membership was unanimous. 600 civilizations, some ancient and others young, all agreeing that humanity deserved a voice in galactic affairs. Dale felt the weight of that responsibility, but also the support of beings who had been exactly where he was, once upon a time. After the ceremony, Dale found himself on a balcony overlooking Qualth's capital. Oren joined him, both of them watching the lights of a city that had stood for millennia. "What happens now?" Dale asked. "Now you continue doing what you have always done. You treat others with dignity. You seek solutions that respect differences rather than erasing them. You remind us all why we chose cooperation over conquest. Orin paused. And humanity takes its place among the stars, not through military might or technological superiority, but through character. Dale thought about his old life, hauling cargo across lonely routes. That life was gone now, replaced by something he never imagined. But the core remained the same. Help when you can. Treat others with respect. Do the right thing even when no one is watching. I still can't believe all this happened because I fixed a broken shuttle. Orin smiled, the expression transforming his ancient features. The smallest acts often create the largest ripples. You saw someone in need and responded with kindness. That choice changed your life, renewed my purpose, and opened humanity to the galaxy. He placed a hand on Dale's shoulder. Never underestimate the power of simple decency. They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the stars emerge in the darkening sky. Somewhere up there, Earth was receiving news of its formal acceptance into the Galactic Assembly. Humans across a dozen colonies were learning their place in a community of hundreds of worlds. And it all started because one person took a few hours to help a stranded traveler, expecting nothing in return except the knowledge that he'd done something right. Dale touched the crystal fragment in his pocket, feeling its warmth. The galaxy was vast and complex, filled with challenges he was only beginning to understand. But if he could keep that simple principle, help when you can, then maybe he could actually make a difference. The keeper of the first covenant and the cargo hauler turned mediator stood together, two beings from different worlds connected by a simple truth. Kindness matters, even in the vastness of space. Especially in the vastness of space.